All right, good morning, everyone, and happy Saturday. Even though it's raining, it's still beautiful because it is Saturday. All right, just a heads up, just a quick little FYI here. We will be recording today's virtual brunch for or as training purposes. So just kind of wanted to let everyone know that. I am Leslie Williams, and I am the social media director for Women of Purpose. And we are so excited that you have joined our virtual brunch here today. Women of Purpose is a movement that is inspired by God to empower women to discover, to develop, and activate their purpose. And our mission is to shape communities by activating women to lead and to serve. To gain more information about what we do and how you can actually join this awesome movement, make sure that you check out our website, wopurpose.com, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. This morning, we are in for a treat today, and our session is all about growing your purpose. None other than Lakita Gilmore, who is the Women of Purpose founder. She is going to be our facilitator for this morning. So I am so excited to sit back, relax, and just listen and enjoy her. But just as a little housekeeping here, just please feel free, as always, to make sure that you use the chat function for any comments that you may have, or if you have any questions. We would love for you to share your thoughts, and we will actually be providing a time for questions as well. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over into Lakita's hands.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So grateful that you guys joined on a Saturday morning. I don't know where everyone is. It's raining here, but I really do think that we have a great topic for today. And so my name is Lakita Gilmore. Like Leslie said, I'm the founder of Women of Purpose, and this is definitely a movement. So we are so glad that you've joined us and that you're partnering with us. And so one of the biggest things that we do is, Leslie said earlier, that we help women to discover, develop, and activate their purpose. And so back in March and for the last couple of months, we've really been talking about how to discover your purpose, right? How to know what that is. And so for the next couple of months, this month, and then August, September, and October, we're going to talk a little bit more about how to develop your purpose. And that's the reason why we're talking about growing your purpose today. And so I just want to hit on something real quick, is purpose. What is it? It's our Women of Purpose. It's our favorite word. You'll see it all through our website. You'll see it through our social media. And purpose is the reason why something or someone was created. It's the reason why it exists. And so it's so important that we all know that we have been given purpose even before we were born. I love in Jeremiah 1:5, it says this: before I shaped you, this is what the Lord says, before I shaped you in the womb, I knew all about you. Before you saw the light of day, I had holy plans for you. So what that tells us is that God, even before we were born, before our parents got together, he had a specific design plan just for each of us. And so it's important for us to be good stewards of that. And how do we discover, how we develop, and how we activate that is extremely important. So our goal at Women of Purpose is to help women to do that. And the reason why is, Leslie said earlier, our mission is to help women to lead and to serve in their communities. And so there's so many great opportunities for us, but sometimes our own maybe lack of confidence or our trust in our own abilities does not allow us to move out into doing those types of things. I've read research and books, and it talks about, I don't know if any of you have seen this. If you have, tell me right now in the chat if you've heard this, that if there is a position that is available for employment for a specific job, a woman, if she does not feel like she is over 90% qualified for that job, she will not apply for it. Versus men who may only feel like they're 60% qualified will apply for the job. Has anyone even heard that before? And so what that tells us is that we may not always feel confident in what we can do or what our abilities are. And then we kind of shrink back on what we can do. And so our goal is to really help women to know who they are, know what they were created to do, and then go out and actually do it. And so you're going to ask me, well, I missed maybe the first 3 months of when you were talking about discovering your purpose. And maybe I'm not sure exactly what it is. I'm just going to give you one quick hint, um, and go back and listen to some of the other sessions. But one of the things to know is this, is that what you're passionate about, what keeps you up at night, what you talk about often, most likely is something that's connected to your purpose. So I don't want you to feel discouraged if you're like, I don't know exactly what I'm called to do. And it doesn't matter what age you are, right? We're still always in discovery phase. But I do think that it's important, even as we talk about developing, that you're open to still learn about, hey, what are the things that I should be doing? What are the new things that I should be doing? Especially because the season of life is just so different, right? Is anybody saying this is a different type of time? Okay. Yeah. So what I want to talk about, if we go to the next slide, I want to talk about why grow your purpose, right? Why develop what you've been given, the abilities, the gifts, the talents that you've been given. Why do that? The first one is because it helps us to become in perfect alignment with God's will for our lives. Perfect alignment. And then the last thing it does is it helps us to influence and impact others, right? The reason why we need to grow in who we are and our abilities is because we will ultimately affect our communities, our families, and those that are around us. I will tell you this, people are watching you even when you don't think so, right? People are always watching. They're watching to see what we do. They're watching to see what we say. They're watching to see what we post on social media. People are always looking and watching. And I believe that we're all called to be leaders, and you don't have to have a title to be a leader. You just have to have the ability to influence. And so all of us have the ability to influence others, and we really need to be intentional about what we've been given, how we've been given the opportunity to influence people. So that's the biggest reasons why I think that we should grow our purpose, is because it puts us in perfect alignment with God, and then it also helps us to impact those around us. I hear people talk all the time. What can I do? Right? We have so many things that are going on in our culture and our society, and people are like, what should I do? And I do believe that's inside of each and every one of us, that we have the ability to impact and influence those that are around us. So what stops us from growing our purpose? That's the first thing I want to talk about, is what stops us. So if we go to the next slide, what we did was we made here a chart of an unhealthy growth pyramid, right? This is talking about what would stop us from actually growing our purpose, what stops us from actually growing in who we were created to be, or what stops us from living out our full potential. And if you start at the bottom, the first thing I look at is self-reliance. So this is an unhealthy environment when we rely totally on ourselves, totally on our own abilities, totally on what we think is right. If that is the foundation for who we are creating an unhealthy environment for anything to grow. Just like if you think about plants or you think about vegetables, there's got to be like a certain climate, right? You can't grow mangoes in Harrisburg, right? That's the soil and the temperature, it's not the same, right? So in order to grow your purpose, you have to have a healthy environment. So self-reliance at the foundation is not good. Trusting in your own strength and abilities is not life-sustaining. The next one is doubt and worry. So who would agree right now that there is a lot of doubt and worry? If you've experienced that, type that in the chat, or you've seen it. Maybe you're like, I'm not experiencing it, but I've just seen it. If that's you, or you know someone who's experiencing doubt and worry, yeah. So here's the thing. Let me ask you guys a question. Do you think that doubt and worry can actually impact your growth and your potential for growing your purpose? Do you believe that doubt and worry, yeah, it can. It definitely can. Because what doubt and worry does is it says, I can't do it. Doubt and worry will say, well, what about this? And what about that? And what about this. And it gives itself its own type of like worship. It's something that we idolize, you know. And so we have to be so careful of, which goes to the next one, toxic and isolation. And toxic, I'm talking about relationships. If you have toxic relationships, right, that will definitely impact your growth. It will stunt your growth. If you have people in your life that are not speaking purpose over you, or maybe they're only telling you the good things and they're not challenging you to do the better things, that's a toxic relationship that does not help in growth. Living in isolation does not help in growth too, because we grow in community. So when we decide, I'm gonna live my life over here on this side, and I'm not going to involve anyone, or I'm not going to receive, great correction from maybe a sister or brother who can help me. We're living in isolation. It's still, and that goes back to that foundation of self-reliance, right? And then the last thing, the one at the top, I'm going to ask you guys this question. Can challenges, in the chat, tell me, can challenges hinder you from growing your purpose? Yeah, right? So when we look at this, this is what we would consider to be an unhealthy dynamic in your life. Meaning if these are the things that we're focused on, or if this is the behavior that we're listening to, and this is the, I'm not saying behavior we're listening to, I apologize. If this is the behavior that we're walking out, if we're relying only on ourselves, if we're filled with doubt and worry, and if we have toxic relationships, and we have challenges that we feel like are just overtake us, we will have a hard time growing, right? So you're probably saying, okay, well, Lakita, thanks for telling me about all the unhealthy things that are in my life. What do I do with that? So if you go to the next slide, this is where I think we can improve. This is the environment that I believe will help us to grow. If we implement these things, if we create an environment for growth, if we are intentional, we will have the ability to see our purpose grow. We will have the ability to see even those that are around us that look to us as mentors, we will see them grow as well. So let me tell you how. The first thing is, the foundational piece of this is the word, right? It's the foundation of what we do. It's the foundation of who we are. It's the foundation of what we can do, has to be so level set that it is the word of God. Anything else, and you saw the pyramid before, talked about self-reliance, right? And so there would be some people who would say, I'm going to rely on my talents, I'm going to rely on my degrees, I'm going to rely on my experience, and all those things may be well, but if it is not put into the proper perspective, leveled out with the word of God, it's kind of null and void, right? You can have all the experience and all the degrees, but if you don't have a foundation in the word of God, and you know the knowledge and wisdom of God, you may have a hard time walking out your purpose. I really believe that. So the word has to be like that foundational piece. The next one is prayer and worship, right? So we're replacing doubt and worry with prayer and worship, which are total opposite. Remember, I talked about earlier, doubt and worry can actually be a form of worship, or it could be actually a form of putting your worry or those things that seem insurmountable higher than where they should be, where we place them in our lives. And so I believe that a consistent relationship with the Lord through prayer and worship really helps us in our behaviors, and even in our personalities. I will tell you this, and you guys tell me if this is true or not, that when I get into a place, if I'm in a selfish place, anybody ever been in a selfish place where you're praying for something, or you want something and you're like, I want this and I want this now, and you got the time and you're like, God, it hasn't happened yet, what's going on, right? But if I get into a place of prayer and worship, and my focus is not on me, my focus is not on me, but my focus is on him. My focus is on, okay, what is your next steps? Not what I plan to do. We can have a lot of plans, right? Are there any planners on where you do to-do list and you, right? And you plan things out. Well, sometimes what happens when your plans don't go as well. There may be anxiety or there may be stress. And so when you get into that place of prayer and you get into that place of worship, what it does is it takes all of you kind of out of the picture. And what it does is it helps to refocus us back to what is important. And then out of that, when you do that, your purpose is able to grow because you're free from trying to do it all, right? You're free from distraction. You're actually saying, God, I'm coming into alignment with what you have next, what you want to do. That's why it's so important for prayer and worship. How about mentors and church? So people will say, well, Lakita, right now, how's that working out for you, right? We can't get to church, or it's hard, or even if you are able to go to church, you're really not hugging, right? So you're kind of like, what does that dynamic look like? Well, I believe that it is extremely important that we have mentors, people in our life who can speak to us and tell us the honest truth. I do not want friends who are just going to say, Lakita, you sound so good. No, I want people to say, hey, you sounded good here. Here's an opportunity. This is where you can learn, right? We have to want to love feedback. And some of us, that may be hard, right? Some of us don't want to hear feedback. You don't want it because you're like, I think I got this together. But feedback is an opportunity for us to grow. It challenges us. We don't see it all. We don't know it all. So in the chat, tell me right now, be honest with me. Have you ever had a hard time receiving feedback? And tell me why. So have you ever had a hard time receiving feedback? And let me know why. Okay, thanks, Les. Yep. Sometimes oh, that's a good one. Sometimes because it can hurt. Yeah. And sometimes because of the source. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one too. Sometimes feedback makes you feel like you failed rather than improved. And so those are all of those are valid reasons, right? They're all valid reasons why we would say, I don't want to receive feedback. Those are all valid reasons to say, hey, I don't want someone to speak into my life. But I challenge you today, no matter the source, right? Now, I do think you need to weed some things out, right? But sometimes it can be a source we don't want to receive feedback from, but could be actually valid feedback. And that hurts. It feels like a knife, right? Going, oh, right into your stomach. It hurts. You know what I mean? And our first response is, I know they didn't tell me, right? I've been there, right? But it is an opportunity for us to look at the feedback and say, okay, right, step back, put your emotions on the side and say, how can this help me grow? That's how you need to look at your feedback. That's how you need to look at if someone's giving you constructive criticism. It's saying, how can this help me grow? If this can help me grow, I think you need to take a hold of it and use it, right? But if it's something that's, that is unhealthy or it's toxic, that's a different story. But that's why it's important to have good mentors. That's why it's important to be involved in a body that will support you and that will help lead you in the right direction. So even though everything's going on and it's crazy right now and you feel like maybe you can't touch people, I try to use Zoom as much. I would try to make phone calls as much. I would say we have more time than we've had before. And so make sure that you're really reaching out to people that are trusted, that you can believe, that can speak into your life. And the last one is challenges. Did you guys notice was challenges on both pyramids? Okay. So how can we talked about earlier, there's challenges that, in an unhealthy pyramid, there's always going to be challenges, right? And then in a healthy growth, there's going to be challenges there too. Why? Does anyone know why challenges would be on both pyramids? You could type that in the chat. Why would challenges, yep. Challenges help us to grow, yep. And here's the thing too, we all will walk through challenges. That's right, it's a part of life, it's necessary. There's a song that I love that's called It's Necessary, right? Challenges stretch us. Thanks, Chandra. These are I think sometimes we believe that if we walk through a challenge or we walk through a hard situation, that means that we don't have faith, or that means that we've done something wrong, or that means that something's out of alignment. And of course, there are situations that we may be self-induced, but a lot of times challenges are just walking through life. We are not exempt. We are not exempt from suffering. We are not exempt from going through hard times. We are not exempt. And so to take a challenge and then internalize it and say something must be wrong with me, or something must be wrong with God, or you're blaming others, is not healthy, right? But what we do is, what is our perspective of challenges, right? If we look at them and say, it's coming to grow me, oh my goodness, that's so much better to say that than to say it's coming to kill me, right? But how many of you ever felt like it's come to kill me? I mean, I've gone through some situations where I'm like, I'm just gonna die. I'm just gonna die. But it didn't come to kill me. It came to make me strong. And that is what I want you to know today, that no matter what the challenge you're facing, the obstacle, the mountain that's in front of you, and maybe you've tried to speak to it 50 times, maybe you've prayed over it, you've done everything you could, and it's still there. I'm going to challenge you to change your perspective and ask that question, like I said earlier, how has it come to grow me? Look at the opportunity actually in the middle of the challenge, right? How is it coming to grow me? So I said that about feedback, right? When you get that negative feedback, how is it coming to grow me? So even with challenges, how is it coming to grow me? This is how we will be stretched. This is how we will grow. Can some of you even say right now in the chat that you've experienced situations maybe years ago that you're like, it definitely grew me, or it made me a better person? Yeah, right. And so sometimes I think it's important that even in those situations, though they may be um, hard or they may be difficult, ask the question, how is it coming to grow me? So now let's get back to the why. So if we go to the next slide, Leslie, let's get back to the why. Let me ask you guys a question in the chat. Why do you think that we need to be intentional about growing our purpose? So we talked about what cultivates a healthy environment, right? We said it's the word, we said it's prayer and worship, we said it's mentors in a church, and we said even looking at our challenges in a different way. Why do we need to be intentional about growing our purpose? Give you some time there. Ooh, Angela, that's a good one, because the devil is intentional at keeping us from it. Yes, the Soviet. If we don't grow, we will miss out on opportunities in the future because we won't be ready to fill it. Yes, Leslie, when we are intentional, it causes us to be more aware and creates consistency. Yes, like we have to be intentional, right? We cannot just allow for things to happen in our life and we not improve, right? We can't just allow challenges to come and we not grow. We can't just look at our situations and live in isolation. That causes us not to grow. We have to be intentional. So being intentional means, reading scripture. Being intentional means whatever your gift is, whatever your purpose is, that you are actually being intentional to study that, right? If you say, well, I have a dream, I want to be a teacher, but you don't go to school and you don't go to get the degree to do that, and that's your purpose that's been planned for your life, you're not being intentional, right? So then it's just a thought, right? And I don't know about you, but I don't want to just have thoughts, right? I don't want to just have, oh, this was such a great idea. No, what I want is to be, I want to do what I've been called to do. I don't want to miss out, like DeSylvia said, on opportunities, right? That have been planned and laid out just for us. Imagine that. You have divine opportunities that have been laid out and planned just for you, but you have to be intentional to receive it. You have to be intentional to grow and to learn more. And so, what that means to be intentional is that means we have to put in the work, right? You guys know DeSylvia is on the board of Women of Purpose, and she can sing. Like she can sing, sing, sing. She can sing and she can minister. But how many of you know, right, DeSylvia, if you don't practice, right, singing, does that impact your growth, right? And so there is work. Like I have to practice teaching. I have to study. And so all of us, no matter what our gifting is, we have to put in the work. We have to put in the time. And so that's one key thing I wanted to talk about is purposes. Are you putting in the necessary time? So you know what your purpose is. You know, you have this feeling of something that you want to do, right? And it nags you all the time, but you haven't put in the work or you haven't put in the time. I challenge you today to put in the time. One of the things I had to do is I believe I'm supposed to write a leadership book, right? And so kind of that was really impressed on me last year, but I wasn't putting in the time and I wasn't putting in the work. So what that was just an idea. It was a good idea too, right? Sometimes we like talking about our ideas. You know, I would really like to do this, right? But I needed to put in the work. So what I had to do was I had to make a chart. And what I did was I was putting in how much of time I'm spending on different things, right? I wanted to measure how much of time, right, I'm spending, right? And then I had to set aside a goal for myself. And then what I did was I made a chart and I put in, okay, this is the amount of time I spent writing. This is the amount of time I spent writing this day, right? This is how many words that I wrote. And so what that does was it was holding myself accountable, right? And then I reached out to a couple people and I'm like, okay, this is what I did this week. Hold me accountable. What are you doing to put in the time and effort, right? So I took a year, right? And I'm not saying that's good, that's bad, right? Last year, I probably should have started to do that, right? But that's why it's important that you say, okay, whatever this is that's inside of me that I feel like, oh, I really should be doing this, ask yourself, am I putting in the time and work? If you are not, if you've asked yourself that question today and you're not, don't get upset and say, I'm not putting in the work. You know, acknowledge it. Okay, what do I need to do? Put in the work. Whether you need to create a to-do list, whether you need to get that mentor to say, hold me responsible. This is how we will grow our purpose, right? And so getting back to that why do we do this? Because we want to fulfill God's perfect plan, right? In turn, that gives us a sense of accomplishment. I don't know if any of you felt that if you were not doing what God has called you to do, I guarantee you will feel unaccomplished. You will feel void. You will feel empty. You will feel dissatisfied. And so if you are feeling that now, you need to go back and say, wait, maybe I'm out of alignment with the purpose that God has for me. Because I'm going to tell you this, when you are walking in your purpose, I'm not going to say you don't have any challenges because you still have challenges, right? I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is there is this sense of, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, right? Like, so then challenges look different or situations look different. You're like, oh, I'm experiencing this because I am doing what I'm supposed to do, right? So that gives you the motivation to do more. It's the motivation to leap across tall buildings. Is that what they say Superman does? Leaps across tall buildings. And so that will give us a sense of accomplishment. And then alignment with our purpose impacts others. This is so key. Alignment with our purpose impacts others. When we are not growing, when we are not walking out our purpose, it impacts other people. When we are walking in our purpose, when we are growing our purpose, it impacts other people. I see some people who say, well, this person's trying to do what I'm doing, or they admire what I'm doing, right? And so some people be like, well, I don't want anybody copying off of me. You hear that sometimes. And I'm like, look at it this way. Maybe they're not copying. Maybe you're being a trendsetter. Maybe you are setting a trend that you're trying to show people, hey, fully invest in your purpose, fully invest in who God's created you to be, right? Stop thinking they're copycatting off of you. What it's showing is people are watching, right? I said that earlier. People are watching. They're watching your moves. So when you walk in your purpose, or when you don't walk in your purpose, people see that. When you talk about the great ideas you want to do, but you don't walk in that, people see that. And so when you fully align, right, and you're so committed to what God's called you to do, it helps other people to say, I can do the same thing too. I can commit. I can do the same thing. And it may not be the same, exact thing, but they know that they have the ability to trust in God. So let me ask you guys a question in the chat. Do you feel that it's important for us to grow so others can grow? Do you feel that it's important for us to grow so others can grow? Yeah. Yeah. So it's almost like today, right? You're like, Lakita, you're giving me a lot of challenges. You're asking me to look at my challenges and say, how's it come to grow me? You're asking me to look at feedback and say, how does it come to grow me? And the whole reason why is because our influence and impact on others. Our influence and impact on others. And so even when I look at my life, right, and I look at people who have mentored me and impacted me, if they weren't walking in their purpose, I wouldn't have been encouraged to do the same thing, right? And I can tell you today, I feel like I'm walking in what God has for me to do. It could look different though. It could be expanded, and that's for each of you too. Some of you may say, well, I am walking in it, and God's got greater things, even more for you to build upon. So don't even think that, oh, where you at right now is your finish line, because it's not. You're starting, right? And this is really, really good. But when you get into that place, you will feel empowered, and I'm going to call it empowered, right? Because you're more empowered by God. But when people see that confidence, they will want the same thing. And you'll be able to say, hey, to grow and to create a healthy environment, you need the word, you need prayer and worship, you need healthy mentors, you need a body that's going to surround you. And you actually need challenges that are necessary to help grow you. You'll be able to speak that yourselves. All right, let's go to the next slide. I love this quote here. Cynthia, who's actually on our team too, this quote is, healthy digestion leads to healthy growth. Healthy digestion leads to healthy growth. When I looked up the word digestion, it is how your body turns food you eat into nutrients it uses for energy, growth, and cell repair, right? So what you put in your body, right, and it has to be digested, right? And during that digestion process, it goes to provide energy, it goes to grow you, and it goes to repair and restore. This is why, when we talked about that pyramid earlier, it is so important that you are feeding yourself the right things. I will tell you about, it was probably a month ago, for a month, I went vegan. I had never done that before. So just all vegetables and fruit. I couldn't even have honey. You can't have honey if you're vegan. I learned a lot, right? And there were a couple of reasons why I wanted to do it. First is I wanted to rest my digestive system, right? And then another reason why I wanted to do it was self-discipline. And so it was hard at first, right? But I would tell you, my digestive system worked like clockwork, right? It was great. I felt good. I felt energized, but that was because I was putting healthy things in my body, right? I was avoiding of all junk, right? So before that, I was a soda drinker. I'm a Pepsi fan. Anyone like Pepsi or Coke? All right, no, everyone's shaking their heads no. So I used to love Pepsi. Oh my goodness, I love Pepsi. And so even after coming off of the month of eating vegan, we had Pepsi in the refrigerator, hadn't had that like in weeks, right? But I remembered the taste, right? The taste was good always to me. And I remembered when I decided to pour some, right? I'm like, I'm gonna have some Pepsi, right? Because I remembered how satisfying the taste was. So I drank the Pepsi, guys. No lie, it felt like acid going down my throat, right? And Les is looking because she used to always tell me to stop drinking soda. It really felt like, and first when I drank it, I was like, is something wrong with my throat? But I didn't have a sore throat. So I'm like, what's going on? So then I was like, well, let me take another sip, right? Because it must be something wrong. I took another sip and it again felt like acid going down my throat. So I said to myself, but I thought it always tasted good. My body had gotten used to this toxic thing called soda, right? That's not apparently, sorry guys, it's not good for us. And it was like acid. So I'm like, is that what this is? The taste that I'm getting now, the sensation of acid burning, is that what is happening on the inside of my body? Right. And so I really encourage you to look at what are those toxic things that could be stopping your growth, right? What are those things? And there may be things that you're like, well, it tasted good, or it was good before, or this toxic relationship isn't that bad, or this negative way of thinking isn't that bad. But what it can do is actually hinder you. It could hinder your growth. It could hinder your digestion. So it's important that we know that healthy digestion leads to healthy growth. So what we put in, right, is then disseminated out through our body. What the thoughts, the TV shows that we watch, right? It impacts us. The constant social media, right, impacts us. So in the chat right now, tell me if you believe that the things that we put inside of us, whether that's physically, mentally, or emotionally, that it will impact our growth. Do you agree with that? Yeah, I like that. Yes, 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 yes. I agree 100%. All right, so let's grow. We need to grow. So we talked about, unhealthy environment. We talked about a healthy environment. We talked about digestion. And so you're like, okay, well, Lakita, I got on this call because I want to learn how to grow. What do I need to do to grow my purpose? What do I need to do to grow these ideas? How do I take it from ideation to execution? That's how we would say it at work. How do I take it from, oh, this is a great idea and I talk about it all the time, to now let's do it? I heard someone tell me one time that sometimes if you talk about it so much, it's almost like a release, and then you feel like you don't have to do it. Like the idea, just having the idea was good enough. No, it's not. You need to put legs to it. So how do we grow? So let's talk about purpose prep. These are things that I believe that we can do. If we do, we will definitely grow in our purpose. I truly believe this. So the first one is plan, be intentional. Okay. Learn your skill, be a master at it. Don't be a master at everything. Don't be a master at the things that looks appealing that other people are doing. Be a master at what you've been called to do, right? Plan, be intentional about that. I will tell you, so I love singing and I love music, right? And so I teach and I preach, and sometimes at churches, at some churches, the preacher will actually sing before they preach, right? I absolutely love that. Okay, well, here's a person who can't sing, right? And so I remember wanting to do that. I'm like, I want to be able to sing and I want to be able to preach at the same time, right? But y'all, I cannot really sing. I can sing enough to give worship to God, but it's not something that would be recorded, okay? And so what happened was I started kind of putting some investment into this singing thing, and that wasn't what I was purposed to do, right? So I had to kind of step back and I'm like, okay, what have I been purposed to do? And this sounds small, but I think this is key for all of us, right? Be a master at that. Invest in that. Be intentional about that, right? Don't spend time on things that aren't for you to spend time on. That's what I'm trying to say, right? And when I did that, there was like this release. And then I was okay with saying, oh, okay, I don't have to be like so and so, right? I have to be like me. So I encourage each of you, what may look shiny on someone else, if it's not meant to look shiny on you, do not waste time doing that, right? Be intentional, plan, learn your skill, and master that. The next one is set and adhere to boundaries, right? Who likes boundaries? Some, yes. Just so you said me, yeah. Sometimes boundaries can be hard for some people because they're like it's restricting, but sometimes boundaries are good because it keeps us on track, right? So set some boundaries, whether that's in your relationships, whether that's in practice or whatever you're learning or that skill. Make sure that you're setting boundaries, and then hold yourself accountable, making sure that your mentors hold you accountable, which goes into build your cabinet. So this is key. We say this at Women of Purpose all the time, is who's in your cabinet, right? Who's on your team? Who are the people who will speak into your life and challenge you? Who are the people who will give you encouragement when you need it? You need to make sure you have that, right? And if you don't, and I would even encourage you to do this, take an inventory of who are the people, and I'm not talking about everybody in your life, right? Because everybody has associates and friends, but who are those people that sit at the table with you? Evaluate and say, hey, are those the right people for me, right? Are they, and I'm going to even challenge you to challenge yourself and say, are they challenging me enough? If you're not being challenged, if the people in your circle aren't challenging you, then you need to make sure that you incorporate someone who's going to put some fire under you and be like, okay, let's go, right? It's very important that you know who's in your cabinet and who's supporting you. And supporting you also means giving you feedback even when you don't want it. And the next one is celebrate your accomplishments, even if they're small wins, right? Celebrate those things. So if you set some boundaries for yourself and you know that you're supposed to write, or you're supposed to start a small business, or you're supposed to start a new ministry, right? Keep track of your timeline, right? And then when you hit those things, celebrate those. Even if they're small wins, celebrate them, because it will help encourage you to keep going. And then the last one is repeat, meaning plan, set and adhere to boundaries, build your cabinet, celebrate your accomplishments, and then guess what? Repeat again. These are the things that I believe can definitely help you grow your purpose, right? I love 2 Timothy 1:6 says this, for this reason I remind you to kindle afresh the gift of God, which is in you through the laying on of hands. So basically what the author is saying, that I'm reminding you to set that on fire. Don't lose energy. Don't lose faith. Don't lose hope in what God's giving you to do. You have to be intentional to set it on fire, right? If you're at a campfire, you just don't, you know what I mean, walk away from the fire. There's more wood you need to add or accelerant that you need to add, right? You have to keep that fire burning. So even if you're in a place today and you feel like, hey, I've been called to do something, or I'm supposed to do something, but I feel like it's not there anymore, or you put it on the shelf because you went through a challenging time, or maybe even someone talked you out of doing it. Someone who you trusted told you you couldn't do it. I'm going to tell you to go back to that thing, go back to God, and take that in the middle of prayer and worship, and ask God to give me a new fire for this. If this is what you called me to do, God, here's the thing. He will give you the grace and the strength to do it. Don't think that if he's given you an idea or if he's called you to do something, that he's not going to give you the grace to walk it out. He's going to give you the grace to walk it out. I mean, you got to still walk. You still have to walk, but he will give you the grace to do it. You will look back and be like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I will tell you, even how Women of Purpose was created. It started off with doing a conference at an amazing church in Harrisburg, and some of the women are on today. And so we started with a conference, right? And then we had another conference, right? 2019. So we did 2 conferences, and then it was really impressed upon us that, okay, no, this can't just be a conference. This is a movement God is creating. There, I want you to put teeth to this, right? And so we were given some words, and I was like, okay, well, how are we going to do this? And the Lord was like, I'll provide the resources. I will provide the team. And God did exactly that. He provided the team. We have a wonderful board. We have people that are coming onto our team. He gave us the resources to do. Like, we would never have thought last year at this time that where we would be today, right? But that's because he gives us the grace. He doesn't just give you the idea and say, okay, go do it, right? He goes, I'm giving you the idea, and guess what? I'm going to walk alongside with you. Guess what else I'm going to do? I'm going to give you divine appointments with people. Guess what else I'm going to do? I'm going to bring people alongside of you. Guess what else I'm going to do? I'm going to make sure that you have the money available. Guess what else I'm going to do? So basically, he does it. God does it. What he just wants us to do is just to come into agreement with what he wants to do in us. So that's my encouragement today. If you feel like, oh, you know what I mean, this is hard, and I don't want to do it, and I'm going to be honest, there's going to be resistance, but the grace is more sufficient than the resistance that will come. I want to encourage you to that, to know that. Colossians 3:23 says this: whatever you do your work heartily as for the Lord rather than for men, right? So when you work your purpose, when you work your gifts, and when you walk it out, do it as an honor to God. It's almost like it's worship to him, right? When we align with him and when we do what he's called us to do, it is actually worship to him. It's our way of saying, God, you're good. You're good, and I align with that. So remember that. Do it heartily as unto the Lord. So I just want to end with this. And it kind of goes a little bit back to the why is this. What you feed yourself impacts others. What you feed yourself impacts how you feed others. It's key. People are watching you. People are watching. They're watching to see if you walk out your life with grace, with purpose. And so even with that, with people watching, right? Even with that receiving fulfillment from doing what God's called us to do, he is in the center. He should always remain the center and the focus for our purpose, because that's where our purpose comes from. So what questions do you guys have? Would love for you to type some into the chat if you have any questions or just even comments. We would love to hear from you. We have about 9 more minutes left, so hopefully I didn't go too long for you guys. But does anyone have any comments?
Kid, I have a question. It's actually,
Sure.
I held my question, and okay. I wrote it down so I would not forget. But you have mentioned something in reference to toxic people, toxic feedback, if you will. So my question was in reference to that is, how can you tell when the feedback that you're getting is actually toxic?
Yeah, I would say the first thing that you have to do is you step back, right? So you kind of remove the comment or the feedback from the individual, especially if it's someone who you don't warmly receive feedback from, or if you do warmly receive feedback from them, if it's good. But I would kind of take back. Sometimes we're really quick to say, no, that's not right. But how many times have you said, no, that's not right? And then maybe a couple hours later, you're like, oh, maybe there was some truth in that, right? So the first thing I would say is when you're in that situation, kind of remove yourself emotionally from how you want to respond. So if somebody gives you feedback, you can say, hey, you know what, thanks for the feedback. I'm going to consider that, right? And then I would, especially if it doesn't agree with you, right? Sometimes like we know if we're like, okay, that's right, right? But if you're still not sure, I would definitely take it back in prayer and ask that question. How can this grow me? I'll tell you, I got feedback one time. So I am a talker. I love to talk, right? The gift that I have. And so sometimes I finish people's sentences. Um, and so in some people are laughing. And so in some of my circles, that works out okay, right? Because I have some friends that all do the same thing. Like we all talk over each other and we go back to the conversation. It's all respectful. We love each other, right? But there are times that does not always work. And so there was a specific person in our family who I would do that with, and I would kind of, finish the sentence, or right, or I would kind of change the subject. And he said something to me, and he was like, you know what? I'm going to just let you continue to talk, right? And I was like, right? Like I felt like, oh wait, there's something there, but I'm fun loving Lakita, and we're just talking, but that really evidently hurt him. So I had to look at that feedback and say, do I really do that? Because I'm like, I'm fun. I'm loving Lakita. I don't intentionally hurt people, right? And I don't disrespect people. But what I was signaling was disrespect, right? So I had to take that back. Then what I had to do is I had to ask my husband, hey, so and so said this. What do you think about that? And he goes, oh yeah, you do that. And I'm like, what? So then I'm like, I do? I'm like, how come nobody told me, right? And so I told my husband at the time, I said, if you see me doing that, I said, I want to make sure that I don't, right? So, make sure that send me a hint or a warning if I'm doing that. But then the other thing I started doing was being very intentional when I was with that person, right? So I've received this feedback that I did not necessarily agree with at first, right? I took it back, processed it, and then talked to someone who knows me, right? And then kind of found out that feedback was right. So that's a way that you can process it. Think the feedback, come back, right? Now, if it is toxic and it's not good, then guess what? You drop that off and that's it, right? You're like, okay, thanks. You know what I mean? You've done your part. You looked at it. You prayed about it. And yeah, someone's close to you. And if that's not, and you drop that thing, right? Don't let that hinder and stay on you any longer. Did that help? Okay. Any other questions? You spoke about the feelings we struggle with. You spoke about the feelings we will experience when we're not walking in purpose. Can you speak more about that? Yes. So I believe that you can be severely, severely frustrated when you are not walking in your purpose. You can be anxious. So if any of you are feeling that way, I would encourage you to pray about this. So there have been a season in my life where I was like, well, I want to do this and I want to do that. And you just feel like, okay, I'm not connected to what God's called me to do. So I felt frustrated. I felt incomplete. I felt like, and not me like necessarily like, oh, I have to, do this as a person, but I felt like I wasn't doing what I was called to do. So there was frustration because there wasn't an opportunity, right? And so sometimes a lot of that frustration is we're waiting for the opportunity to come. We feel like we're totally prepared, right? And the opportunity is not there, or we're prepared and the opportunity is not there. So we're like, oh my goodness, what's going on? So I truly believe even in those seasons of you feel prepared and the opportunity is not there, to really trust God, right? And pray about, are you in the right place too, right? That could be in the right job, in the right ministry. It could be in just different things. And that you definitely have to pray about and say, God, why do I not feel like I'm accomplishing what I'm meant to do? And it could be like your alignment's off. Here's one thing I noticed. Different seasons, God may have you in different places in your life, right? And so I think we believe we're committed to one thing and we think we commit to that forever, right? And so it's important that we are flexible and we're pliable, that God, if he says move left, that we'll move left. If he says move right, we'll move right. But I do believe if you are not in alignment with God's perfect will for your life, you will feel frustrated. You will feel almost incomplete because there's something that's missing. And remember too, purpose was created before you were. So what you were purposed to do on this earth was created even before your parents got together, right? It's so embedded in you. So if it's embedded in you and you're not in alignment with it, there's going to be a void there. So I would strongly encourage you to really pray about, how can I how can I come into alignment and then be okay with what he says? That's, I think, the hard part. Right? I always say this all the time. Sometimes we don't ask God questions because we don't want the answer. Because the answer could be this, and you're like, oh, if I know the answer, then I'm responsible for the action. Right? So, yeah, I hope that helped. Did that help? Okay. Any other questions? We got 1 more minute left. All right. When you feel your talents are not being utilized in a group, that's a good one. When you feel your talents are not being utilized in the group you're in, is it okay to move on? So this is what I believe. Is it okay to move on? Like I said before, I truly believe that there's seasons in life. And I do believe in movement, right? I believe that God calls us to certain things and certain people at certain time, right? All of us probably may not even have all of the same friends we've had when we were in school, right? Or when we were in college, or maybe 5, 10 years ago, right? There's different seasons. Not that you didn't impact their lives at that time, right? And even in group dynamics, and that could be jobs, that could be ministries, that could be just a wide variety. It could be boards or associations that you're on. And I will tell you, I've had to do that myself. I was on several boards, and I really clearly heard the Lord spoke, the reason for movement. One of the reasons too for movement, and we don't talk about this too much, is that we need to prepare other people to lead. Right? If we lead continuously and we're going to stay in something for 15 or 20 years, how does that provide leadership or giving leadership abilities to someone else? And the Lord spoke to me about it, but I'm like, but God, I can do this in my sleep. Right? It wasn't hard for me. I could do it in my sleep. And God was like, you're not giving someone else opportunities. Right? And so I moved out of that, right, role. And now, because I have the experience of doing that, I quickly can hear when the Lord says, hey, move, change this. And we just need to be pliable to do that. God is constantly, he doesn't change, but the way he moves does, right? And what he wants, we need to make sure that we are in the right place at the right time. And I don't want to miss God. So that's my heart, is I don't want to miss God. So if he says, hey, I need you to do this and not this anymore, then guess what? I need to do it, because if I don't, I'm disobedient. I'm going to be frustrated. And yeah, here's the thing. Is that uncomfortable? Yes, at first, right? Does it feel like, oh my goodness, I'm letting people down? It could, like our flesh or our emotions can feel that way. But I will tell you, on the other side, it feels good because, like, oh my goodness, now I don't have these issues. Because the one situation I was in, it was a struggle, right? I'm like, oh my goodness. What it was is there was no grace to do it. That's what God does. That's the first warning sign that you should not be doing, or you should be doing something else, is God lifts the grace, right? You were able to do it before, and now there's frustration. There's things that are, things that are happening. You need to ask God, God, is the grace gone? If the grace is gone, so am I. So it's really about, and I know I'm making light about it, and those are definitely hard choices. I've been there, but I think that's extremely important that we go back to God and say, hey, am I where you want me to be? And if I'm not, I'm willing to move. Yeah. So that is it for today. It is 11:02. So sorry we took you over for 2 minutes. Just wanted to let you know, if you're not following us on Women of Purpose on our website, go to our website, join the movement, so you can stay up to date with any of our upcoming events. We're going to have 2 more virtual sessions totally on developing, right? And they will be on the last Saturday of September and October. And you're going to hear more from all of the different women that are participating on the board with Women of Purpose. And make sure you follow us, like Leslie said, on our Instagram and our Facebook page, and get the word out and tell other women to follow us and join us. So we believe that as you join us, you're just joining to receive information. You are joining because now you are empowered to go and do the same thing with other women. So that's what we believe at Woman of Purpose is. We are about multiplication. We are about everyone being able to feel empowered to lead other women. So it was great having all of you on this morning. Les, I think we are good to go to end the session. All right, thanks everyone. See you, bye-bye.